Yo guys, what is going on? It is Invin here, and today what I wanted to bring to you guys is a video on a few of the things that I think, due to my own opinions, community feedback, and general FAQs, if you like, that are being asked in and around the community, like in-game, on the forums, on the Steam forums, Reddit, YouTube comments, Twitch comments, all of that stuff mashed together on what AGS and what New World need to do with their game in the upcoming few weeks / next couple of months to really get it on track for the majority of players. Now, if you haven't been kind of following the game strictly over the past couple of months, it has significantly improved in terms of stability, in terms of fluidity of gameplay overall, so access to different parts of the content, as well as, you know, some of the combat stuff has been improved. A lot of the expedition stuff, for example, you only need one person at the entrance to an expedition for the entire group to be ported in now, rather than 3. So lots of QOL kind of factors put in there, as well as actual physical gameplay improvements, like I said, with lag and desync. Now, I know there is still a few issues on that, which of course they will be continuing to monitor and kind of update as and when they can. But today I want to talk about specifically things like the bow, things like tanks, and talk about where I think, according to myself and of course community feedback, what players are generally looking for in terms of coming up in the next couple of weeks / couple of months, with especially 3v3 arenas just around the corner after yesterday's dev video covered them a significant amount. Now, before we jump into today's video, if you are new to the channel but you do want to see more New World content, whether it be discussion videos like today, or whether it's updates and news or tips, tricks, guides, that sort of stuff, then do be sure to subscribe down below, as I do cover all of that stuff here on the channel. And if you do go on to enjoy today's video, please do drop me a like, as well, as it massively helps to support my content here on the channel. And without further ado, we're going to jump into it. So one of the first points that I obviously wanted to bring up is bow usage, as this is something that they covered in yesterday's dev update video. Now, they said that they are going to be looking into this a fair bit, bringing it more up to speed, more consistency, with things like being routed after firing a projectile or an ability, things like the travel time on the arrows being significantly slower than things with the musket, so you can easily miss targets, and all of that good stuff, just to name a few basic things. But of course, they are going to look at the damage output, the way that the skills work in PvP combat as well as in PvE combat, to try and bring up the damage, bring up the viability a little bit. And I know a few people were kind of saying in yesterday's comment section, well, actually, I quite like the bow, I like the way it plays, and I do think that, in my opinion, it's one of the most fun weapons. However, it doesn't have the edge versus things like the Warhammer, the Great Axe, or the Ice Gauntlet, Void Gauntlet. That sort of stuff is leagues ahead, and therefore is why it's getting chosen more, particularly in territory wars, but also things like OPR. And of course, when we see the 3v3 arenas come out, this is going to be even more crucial. Now, of course, with the bow, there needs to be a fine balance. Of course, you don't want it to be too overpowered. With it being a ranged weapon, there needs to be some downsides to it, but right now it is fairly lower than pretty much every other weapon, and like I said, it is one of the most fun when you actually do use it, so it'd be great if they bring this up and give it a little bit more kind of viability. In my opinion, it sits somewhere between kind of the musket's got the long range stuff, the blunderbuss has got the short range shotgun, the bow's kind of in that mid to long range thing, but it's also got some AoE abilities. I know you've got sticky bomb with the musket, but like you've got rain of arrows, you've got poison shot, but you've also got that nimble aspect to it where you're able to do some movement abilities like evade shot, and that is what really sets the bow apart, is the movement capabilities with some big damage or big AoE stacks, which I think hopefully they should keep in mind when they do go ahead and make these changes, to keep it still in that role, but just make them a little bit better for particularly in PvP, but also in those PvE instances as well. Now, the next thing that I want to touch on is tanks and generally sword and shield users. Again, upcoming with this next update, you guys will be able to keep your stats from a sheathed shield, which is going to be a lot better than it is currently. Of course, right now, when you sheath your weapons, you lose the stat bonuses from your shield, which might mean when you're running around, say for example, you're running a 300 constitution, 200 strength build, you might be losing some of your points and therefore dropping below a certain threshold to get bonuses. Isn't all that bad, but it is quite annoying to understand where you're at. So this is obviously going to be changed with this update, which is fantastic news. But I do feel like, again, tanking hasn't got as much of an impact in PvP. Now, of course, bear in mind, tanking is predominantly a PvE feature. The point of it is to draw aggro from the mobs so that they hit the person with the sword and the shield, things like the Carnelian gem in there to attract the aggro and threat. and then they hit that player whilst the DPS then do damage, and the healer focuses heals on that tank player. They generally build up constitution, and while that playstyle can be useful in PvP, it does lend itself more to PvE. However, what I think that New World is missing at the moment, and from general player feedback, is some options for players that want to use the sword and the shield to be able to do that more viably in PvP and become almost like a more statutory CC unit, so somewhere between a bruiser and a tank. Obviously, you won't be able to draw threat. Players just go for whoever they want, and generally they are going to pick out obviously the easier targets, but what the tank kind of players are looking for is a little bit mobility, a couple of mobility things being in there, but more than that, they're looking for the ability to stun targets like the Warhammer can, for example. They're looking for the ability to do a bit more damage, and albeit that you have the swordsman side of the tree right now, or the swordmaster side of the tree, this is pretty good and you can do some decent damage with it, but compared to a lot of the other weapons, if you are predominantly a tank, and that's maybe the gear that you've got up past 600, it depends what stage of the game you're at, but let's say 615 for example is your average gear score. Maybe you've got your sword and shield to 620 because you're tanking in dungeons. That doesn't transfer too well to PvP, so I think what a lot of tanks are asking for at the moment, and what a lot of the community seems to be saying, is if Sword and Shield had a couple more abilities that were viable for PvP specifically, that would be great. So again, it takes a lot of balancing because they have to be worthwhile to use in PvE, as well as that is, like I said, the predominant role of a tank. However, some heavy armor Sword and Shield users in PvP being advantageous would also be great, as long as it didn't become overpowered and, you know, too unable to kill, which is, you know, obviously a fine line to tread. So interesting one, but again, hopefully we can work some abilities or rework some abilities in there that the tanks could be using more effectively. Now, of course, when we're talking about things like tank builds in PvP, there is going to be players who say that they like it how it is. There is other players that want change. I'm just generally summarizing what the community feedback has been. Of course, there is some builds where you can do fantastic with the tank build already in PvP, but generally people have been asking for changes, so that's where we're coming from that point of view. Now, the other thing that they talked about a lot yesterday, and that is kind of what I'm basing some of these kind of discussion points from, if you will, is the group finder for expeditions. Now, this one is a really interesting feature, and I think it is going to be something that a lot of the community are happy to see in the game, because right now it is sometimes a little bit difficult to find groups for mutations based off of, you have to say to people, can you link me your full set of gear, etc., so that you can see whether they've got the right gear score, whether they've got the right item perks, whether they've got the right stats on and stuff like that, and you've still got no way of knowing what their overall attributes are, as well as, you know, their stats and that kind of thing. With this group finder, the way that they kind of explained how it would work is you could set a minimum gear score requirement for a group, and when players wanted to join, you'd be able to see their stats, their gear score, their kind of overall attributes, that sort of stuff, which would be really, really cool and helpful, and I think that this is going to be something a lot of players are really looking forward to. Now, I know that this isn't something we're going to be seeing in the next month or two, so technically it's slightly out of the radius of this video, but it is something that I wanted to address because I think it is going to be important that that comes out, and when it does come out, hopefully we've got, you know, maybe cross-server compatibility at some point, even if it's not right away. I do think that that's going to be super important because it will allow people to find games a lot quicker, even when the servers are not as busy. And this is really important based off what they said yesterday as well in terms of the mergers, where they are looking to introduce region mergers, so you can go over and transfer to a different region with your character, and they are going to be looking at some more server mergers within the same region if they need to, but they have not got plans at the moment to offer free character transfers to players. Now, the reason that I think this is then therefore super important that the group finder has cross-server compatibility, at least within the same region, is because if your server does lose a few players and it goes down to levels where there's not that many groups active, things like being able to do OPR would be amazing cross-server, things like expeditions would be amazing, and of course when we get the brand new queue system for the 3v3 arenas as well, all of these things would be sped up by that. Now, I know it's not just a quick fix thing, but it is something that I think myself and the community at large is really hoping to see in the near future in New World. Now, something here else that I wanted to cover is events. Now, again, something they talked about in the dev video, which is why it sparked my interest. They spoke about double XP weekend that we've had. They also spoke about the Steam free weekend that we've had, and they said that both of those events were fairly successful. Now, in my opinion, I think that the double XP one was significantly more successful than the free weekend. For my liking, there was too many free servers, not enough population on them. I think they should have merged everybody together so that there was a lot of life, a lot of bustle to New World, as that is one of the charms of it, is when you see all of these settlements and monuments and places around the world filled with players, other people running around. It's really cool. If there's only like 10 to 15 players on a server, they're really not going to get the feel for the game, and I do think that's a shame. But there's a chance for that to be changed in the future for upcoming events in that respect. However, focusing on the double XP event, which in my opinion was very good and very well executed, this was a lot of fun. Now, obviously, it came with the release of a brand new weapon, so we all pretty much sweated that up to level 20, got all of our attribute points, all of our skill points there, so that we could, really test out the blunderbuss, even if we didn't have the expertise up quite yet. It was still pretty cool, and I enjoyed doing that. Also managed to get a few other weapons up to 20, so I'm pretty much maxed out now, which is nice, and it means that I've got a lot more viability for different weapons, because I had the expertise for things like the spear all the way up to 600, but still only had it around level 14, so I managed to max that out, which means I've now got a different avenue that I could explore within the dungeons, other than maybe the Void Gauntlet Oblivion. I've got the spears, rend and debuffs that I can use there, for example in the mutations, so that is really, really nice, and I would like to see more of these going forward. Now, other ideas from this that a lot of the community have mentioned are things like double crafting experience, double gather rates, etc. All of those would fall under a similar sort of thing, again with refining. Also, double drop rates for rare items, which I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe it's quite nice that some of them are exclusive. However, maybe a globally luck boosted by a certain percentage for a weekend, so that everybody has chances at getting better drops across the board, would be a cool idea. I'd like to see that. Maybe some of those trophies could come more into fruition, and, things like those gold brace chests that not a lot of us have seen. Those things would be much more, potential to come into it, but of course, it's still, even with a luck boost, is going to be a high percentage chance to not get. So I think that'd be a cool event. A lot of people have been recommending that on the Reddit and the forums, which I think would be quite a fun time. So of course, whilst they're focusing on the kind of development side in terms of balancing, patching, bug squashing, all of that good stuff, the fun side of things with the events, again, should keep thriving and keep including them every few weeks, because they really do liven up the game. They're driving a lot of players into a lot more kind of engagement with it. I really enjoyed it. I like the Easter event that's going on now. There's people running around getting the rabbits all the time, which again is really cool. It just makes the world feel much more alive, which I think is super important for a game like New World. Now, these have just been a few things that I've seen kind of as like the top things talked about in the community at the moment, whether it's, like I said, in my comments here on YouTube or on Twitch, or whether it's things like the forums, Steam forums, Reddit, Twitter, etc., where people are leaving their thoughts and feelings. These are sort of the general topics that keep cropping up time and time again. So, of course, do let me know your thoughts on them down below in the comments, and let me know anything else that you would personally like to see changed in the next upcoming few weeks or few months here in New World that would really kind of top the game more for, make the game more enjoyable as it is right now, of course, barring any new content, because we know some of that is on the way. So this is kind of existing things that should be changed in your opinion. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video, kind of updating you on what the community's talking about, what the kind of most current hot topic issues are, and hopefully as well, maybe this just highlights some of the key areas that the community is talking about and hoping to see fixed, so that maybe we can get some fixes to those as fast as possible, which would be absolutely amazing. Other than that, that is going to be it for today's video, guys. So I would like to thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. If you did enjoy, don't forget to drop a subscribe and a like down below, as both of those things really help to support me and my content here on the channel. And other than that, I will catch you very, very shortly with a brand new upload. Take care, guys, and peace.